welcome to social work session. My name is Vesna. I'm a professor of social work working for ACAP. This is the 4th year, but coming from Europe, from the region of Southeast Europe, from the Balkans, former Yugoslavia, have been in social work academia for 17, 18 years now. And I'll talk more about my experience throughout this session. And so, because before we start, I want to, make this acknowledgement. So in the spirit of reconciliation, ACAP acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. So as I mentioned, our agenda today is me welcoming you and telling just a few sentences about me, and then we'll talk about ACAP and what it means to study at ACAP, give you some course information, and we'll leave some time for your questions and answers by the course advisors. So please, any questions that you might have throughout the session or at the end of the session, write in the chat box, and it will be answered either by me or the course advisor for any questions that you might have. So ACAP is delivering specialist courses since 1983. It's a national provider. It has its campuses open in Sydney, running in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, and Byron Bay. The main courses or courses that we have at ACAP is coaching, counselling, criminology, psychology, social work, and different management courses, which I suppose you are aware of. Since 1983 up to today, more than 20,000 graduates from, we have 20,000 graduates from ACAP. So the philosophy of ACAP is to bring your whole self to ACAP. So as I've mentioned, the philosophy underpinning and driving all ACAP courses is that we work to ensure all our people feel, first of all, comfortable bringing their whole selves to ACAP. Students coming from diverse backgrounds, from all walks of lives, from different countries. We have international and domestic students, so we are really a diverse community. We are committed to creating this diverse and inclusive learning environment, which is extremely important. It always has been, but especially these days, and ensuring all our community is treated equally so they can enjoy everything ACAP has to offer. This is very much in line with the principles of social work as well. So if you would like to learn more about our community here, there's a link that you can explore in your own time with a lot of information also included via these links. So if we are to start with answering the questions why students choose ACAP, most students reply that they enjoy not just the lectures but the tutorials and this personalized learning. So we've made a lot of effort to make the online learning also personalized learning. So when it comes to face-to-face learning, it's much easier to engage in the classroom, but even using these modern technologies online, I suppose we were very successful, happy with how we've dealt with the challenges that were in front of us. Our teachers at ACAP are people that who also work in the industry or have been working in the industry, such as myself, working in the practice of social work and then engaging into academia after I completed my PhD. Another reason why students choose ACAP is the student placements. I'll talk more about the placement in social work and studying social work. So, but all our disciplines have placements, which is the education in the field that you study. Our degrees are all accredited by relevant bodies, and I'll talk more about, but this is extremely important for you to know, because if a course is not accredited, that means that in the practice, once you graduate, it might not be recognized in the industry. So this is another extremely important information or piece of information for you, and another reason why students choose ACAP, because all the courses are, all the degrees are accredited by relevant bodies. We have 3 intakes during the year in February, June, and September, which means that we go by trimesters, 12, 13 weeks per trimester instead of semesters like many higher education organizations go by semesters, not trimesters. So we have 3 intakes because we have 3 trimesters throughout the years. When it comes to fees, upfront of fee help, there's that student loans for certain courses. So this is something that if you have questions with regard to this element of this session, you'll get the answers from our course advisors, because I'm academic and don't deal with or am not familiar enough with those questions. Also, something that is recognized by students in ACAP is that there's a support for students, there's on-campus workshops and online webinars that are standard in providing or delivering our courses. Also academic support topics such as essay writing, plus individual consults with the SLS, which is a service, a learning service for advisors for students that, so students that are challenged with their studies or are facing any difficulties in writing their assessments, they can get advice or support from this service called SLS service. Also, ACAP is known for this accessibility service where students facing some health issues are able to register with this service and then get necessary support throughout their studies. Again, the free and confidential counseling service are also available to all students that study at ACAP, any course. Let me now introduce and welcome I want you to hear from our alumni. So welcome Alice, and thank you for joining us today. Alice will be sharing her experience throughout her studies of social work and tell us more about where did this all, after the graduation, lead her in her life. So please, Alice, welcome again. It's great having you today. Would you please address this wonderful group that we have today?
Most certainly. Hello, everyone. My name is Alice. Thank you, Vesna, for that warm welcome. I'm really delighted to be able to speak to you all. I remember when I initially enrolled in ACAP, I don't know if they had these sessions, so I'm really glad that I can be here and talk to you about my experience with ACAP and my experience now having graduated with social work. So I think just before I begin, just going off on what Vesna said. So for me, the main reason that I chose ACAP was because I began my bachelor's in a larger university. I don't think it's probably fair to say which one, but I had a really negative experience studying social work at a larger university. Just the lecture halls of like 300 people, feeling very disempowered, very alienated and disenfranchised from like that university experience, and then came across ACAP. And the thing that drew me towards it was like the intimate classes, and that really you build those relationships not only with your colleagues and your peers, but your lecturers and professors as well. So that was something that attracted me. And I can now say, having graduated from ACAP, was the experience the whole 4 years of the degree. And some of my dearest friends are the people that I met through my course as well. So yeah, to tell you a little bit about me. So when I started social work, I was working in the mental health field. I was working in forensic mental health, which meant basically a big part of my role was supporting and advocating for clients that were going through the forensic mental or the New South Wales Mental Health Review Tribunal. And that was a really heavy role. I don't know if many of you work in the mental health space at the moment or have aspirations to, but when you first jump into it, it can feel like a very deep ocean, a little bit discombobulating. But ACAP were fantastic with it. The lecturers and professors took the time out of the day to kind of be a bit more mentors for me whenever I was having a hard time in class or like through work. And if I used a case study in class, they would always check in with me afterwards to make sure that I was okay and that I had all the tools and resources necessary to look after myself and to look after the clients I was working with as well. But yeah, I so love working in mental health. I still do a little bit here and there. But through my second placement, I kind of found my way into international development, where I self-sourced a placement with Child Fund Australia. And for those of you that don't know what Child Fund is, they are the world's biggest children's rights organisation. They have offices in about 13 different countries, one being here in Australia, and they focus on work in the South Pacific area. So I did my placement there, working and then after placement, I stayed on with them and worked as a bit of a project officer with the international programs team under the global director, which was fantastic. And again, through placement, it's just so much support through ACAP and really helping me kind of translate that theory into practice, which I think is probably one of the biggest challenges in social work, is just learning how to actually apply it to work. But ACAP is brilliant at providing that mentorship to help you do that. And then since graduating, so I actually had my graduation March last year. I was one of the last kind of cohorts to be able to do it in person before lockdown happened again. So hopefully that will start to happen in person again. But since graduating, it's been like a massive, exciting journey, and working in international development and also like in mental health. But probably like my proudest achievement since leaving ACAP or graduating from social work is establishing an organisation called Voices of Influence Australia. And Voices of Influence is a human rights organisation that's really, in its entire purpose, is to move and encourage the masses who are passive individual consciences into being active collective voices for human rights. And in March would be our 1 year anniversary, but in that 1 year we've been able to achieve so so much. And even since graduating at ACAP's been a tremendous support in that. Last year, we hosted an event series in partnership with ACAP with their placement students, which we did about 12 different events, and which was brilliant. So it's great to see that not only the support in ACAP whilst I was studying, but still having that connections with them and those relationships to support my professional and personal growth, having finished graduating as well. But I think the biggest takeaway, I think, from my experience is that I will always see that social workers are the frontline defenders of human rights, or the frontline defenders of human rights issues, whether it's in child protection or whether it's in domestic violence, whether it's in working with young people. Human rights is the bedrock of what we understand about social work. It's in our practice standards, it's in our code of ethics. And I think something that ACAP is really brilliant at is being an incubator for those frontline defenders for human rights and justice. It definitely was ACAP that kind of was that incubator for me, and like really lit that fire in my belly to be a defender of human rights and to create voices of influence and be doing the amazing work that we're doing now. But I am so pleased that I made that transition, like I said, from being a larger university into ACAP, because I think it would have been an entirely different university and learning experience. So I will be forever grateful for that. I don't know how much time we have today, but I am more than happy to share my details. I can give you my email or my phone number if for those of you that are either teetering on the edge of becoming social workers or are trying to find the right path to yourself or to find the right university. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions, should you have any.
Okay, thank you so much, Alice. Thank you for sharing your experience, and let's hope everybody has the same experience as you have had in ACAP and after graduation. So this is wonderful. And there are a few points that I would refer to back to what you've said throughout this presentation, especially the connections making during the field education or student placement, and how that experience is also in practice extremely important to make your own network as a professional, not just at the personal level, but at the professional level. Very important, because networking in social work is extremely important and very productive, because we also have our network at the international level, being the International Federation of Social Workers, which is our umbrella organization, as well as associations of schools of social work. And all social work courses are most of social work courses from different countries around the world are part of that organization. Why is that important? Because these organizations provide standards in education of social work. So if you complete your studies, like for example at ACAP in social work studies, they are in line, accredited, and in line the standards in education with the International Association of Schools of Social Work, just like other social work course in Europe or Asia, or who is also a member of these umbrella organizations. So that's extremely important, because that means that a social worker that got his or her education at ACAP, graduated from ACAP, and social worker that graduated in Germany or London or South America, if their schools are members of this and accredited by these their own national associations of social work, such as in Australia being the Australian Association of Social Work, and I'll talk more about their role into all of this in a minute. That means that social workers that graduate all around the world have the same skills, the basic necessary skills for the profession, and your diploma can be recognized in other countries as well. So this is why it's so important. Let me, again, Alice, once again, thank you so much. I know we don't have much time and we don't want to bore these people, but there's so much about social work. So just briefly, it's a professional, practical and academic discipline that is underpinned by the principles of human rights. As Alice just said, like, we are defenders of human rights and social justice, of collective responsibility, as well. Social workers support and advocate for positive change at every level of society. So there are three levels and three methods that we use in social work that covers everything, basically, because the problems, every individual is a individual that is same as every other human being, but at the same time unique. So we need to tailor our approach, our methods used to fit for the assessment of the needs of our clients, to fit those needs and capacities, and at the same time address the problem. So these three methods are social work with individuals, social work with groups, being the families as well, and community social work. So we do go from protecting vulnerable children and support families in need to work with people, elderlies, people with disabilities, with different mental health issues, and so on. So the scope is extremely big, and there are layers, and as we know from our practice, any problem in life, if we would like to assess and see from different angles, we realize that it's never one factor that influences this problem. It's usually more. So we need to look into all these different layers and levels, and then try to provide the necessary support for people to make the change in their lives. So when it comes to, again, as Alison just mentioned, social workers are human rights defenders. Another thing that I would like to, there's actually many things that we need to understand and cover in social work in order to provide the necessary support or adequate support for our clients. First of all, I have to say that we do have our values and ethics that we need to follow in social work, just like in some other disciplines. For example, doctors and nurses in health system, they need to follow their values and ethics, same in social work, that are all anticipated or all reached by this body, the most important body when it comes to social work. It's the Australian Association of Social Workers. They are providing the rules and regulations for the professionals of social work in practice, as well as accrediting the schools that provide education for social workers. So we always address and we always go back to check what are the values and ethics according to the standards provided by the Australian Association of Social Workers. Professionalism in social work practice means that we have to put aside, or at all times when we're at work, all our problems and our opinion on something, and be professional in this relationship that we have with our clients. So professionalism is above, or it may be different from our personal opinion that might be grounded in our personal, family, religious, and all other values, but we need to follow the values of our profession. we are very culturally responsive and very sensitive when it comes to different cultures. And in our practice simply has to be inclusive. So it means that we need to have these skills and knowledge, and we have different approaches in social work that will address this culturally responsive and inclusive practice. So that means, and that means that, okay, if we are working with a client from a different cultural background, which is something that is very common in the Australian context, then it's okay to say to the client, I don't understand much of your culture. Could you please tell me more so I can understand? Or could you please explain to me what is important in your culture? That means that we are cultural responsive and inclusive. That's exactly what the cultural responsive and inclusive practice approach means. Therefore, we do need the knowledge for practice. So if you decide to study social work at ACAP, you'll learn not just theories, but also their application in practice. What does it mean? How it can be applied, in which situations, if something is not working, how do we come around? How can we make changes throughout the process? This is something that which is part of the education for social workers here at ACAP. Also communication and interpersonal skills. We find quite often that the disagreements between individuals, groups, within the community or at the larger scale are usually grounded in problems when it comes to communication and interpersonal skills. So we do learn, and we then therefore able to apply that in practice to point out if the communication is not appropriate or can be changed to improve the lives of our clients. Also, the practice of social work entails information recording and sharing. So we need to make sure that in accordance to the standards of social work profession, when it comes to confidentiality, because it's always a question of confidentiality, we have to be very clear about that with our clients. So they don't have expectations that, okay, whatever's said here won't be shared with anybody. That is correct, but there are some exceptions. So we learn about how to communicate that, not to, at the same time, not to offend our client, but at the same time, make sure that we perform in line with the practice standards of social work. That are, again, very, very important. Professional development and supervision is another. Apologies, I don't know what happened. Just give me 1 second to. Okay. Professional development and supervision means that social workers, by the Australian Association of Social Workers, are obliged to, and it's not just in Australia, it's across the globe. We as a profession, we are obliged to work on ourselves, to work to professionally continue development. So we go learning, everything is a learning process. And this is what I also say to my students. Every trimester, from every single student, I can learn something. It's not just you learning from me, but I can learn from you, from your experience as well. We are all part of this process. So it's a lifelong learning process. And supervision is, again, another segment in social work profession that is extremely important, because we do need in our practice sometimes and unfortunately not just sometimes, but quite often we face different challenges in applying or working in practice where we need a supervision, we need to share, we need to evaluate the process that we had with our client, and to make sure that, yes, we did all the right things, or we took all the right steps and performed in accordance with the values and the ethics of our profession. So supervision is, again, also a support to social workers that work in practice. Another, when it comes to standards, I just want to make sure that you understand how there are 3 core values that inform the ethical position of social workers in every situation. So there's no situation where we can. So it's respect for all persons, regardless of who they are. And sometimes it is very hard and very difficult. For example, if you work in practice with the survivors of some violence and you work with the perpetrator, it's not easy, but we need to respect all persons. I personally started from the most extreme practice at the time, 30 years ago. I was working for the United Nations, and I started working with the victims of human trafficking, which is extreme trauma at the time in Southeast Europe. But actually that motivated me to, I want to understand what does it take and how can we provide necessary support to people that experience such extreme traumas. So this is how I got into social work and education all the way through. And also my PhD topic was on the social reintegration of victims of human trafficking in Bosnia, where I lived. So respect for all persons, again, a core value, social justice and human rights, defenders of human rights, and social justice is our core value, and professional integrity. So these are the 3 core standards that inform our ethical position in any situation. What do we need? What knowledge do we need for our practice? I suppose you may assume, because we work, our clients could be from the newborn to elderlies, 100 and something years, so the whole lifespan. So, but we, as I've mentioned, we work with individuals, with groups, families, communities, cover all aspects of life. So we need knowledge for global and environmental contexts. So same, in theory, same problem being, let's say, domestic violence. In one context may have the same elements, but we can't analyze it without putting it into the context. It's not the same here in Australia or in some other country, even though as a phenomenon, it does have the same elements, the act, domestic violence. But again, we need to put it in the context, cultural, the social welfare system context, political, and so on. So we need to understand the structure of society. And in order to understand the structure of society, we need to understand the power and disadvantage, the influence of gender, age, ability, sexuality, class, ethic, and economic disadvantages. So who benefits and why So it's very interesting to analyze this power and disadvantage, this balance that exists in every society. We also look into social, political, legal, cultural, and organizational contexts or systems, according to system theories that are very much used in social work or being applied. At ACAP, we especially try to nourish the anti-oppressive practice, being the practice that looks very closely into the structure of the society and the disbalance between the power, those in power and those being disadvantaged. We also look into policies, legislation, or we participate in developing or improving those organizational context and legal framework that exist in the community, whether being a local community, a state or federal level. As I've mentioned, the analysis of power basis systems and so on that usually contravene social work's values and people. We are very much interested, and we are, as social workers, quite often called the agents of change. So we are interested in social change, the human rights, the social justice outcomes. And as we all know, we are living in a very uncertain times, and with the pandemic still ongoing and many things coming and changing with this pandemic. So we have to be very open and analyze everything that's happening in the society, because we are interested in human development, in relationships, in communities. So our task is not easy, but let me tell you something, it's very rewarding. Rewarding, like when you hear one person tell you that, thank you, you helped me change my life. That's enormous, because not many people have the opportunity to participate in changing someone else's life in a good way. So when it comes to industry insight, employment of social workers predicted to rise 22.5 in this year, 2022. So once you graduate social work, where you can work in government bodies, local, state and federal, different NGOs, either large or small, community and health services, this is where we are, criminal justice system, faith-based agencies, there's many faith-based agencies with different religious organizations, aged care, mental health care system, non-for-profit organizations, but also potential future employees are Centrelink, Department of Family and Community Services, Catholic Care, Anglicare, Mission Australia. There are different organizations. So and of course, different international agencies. Again, I'm just going back to how important it is. We're talking our discipline of social work, our social work course is accredited by the Australian Association of Social Workers, which means that who is part of the International Federation of Social Workers, which is the global umbrella organization, which means that your diploma can be recognized in other countries as well. So you can be in the international, you might be also employed by international agency or work in different agencies. What we have, again, already mentioned, student placement and supervision. So all students, depending on either bachelor or master course, have a mandatory student placements or field education. At the Bachelor of Social Work, we have Bachelor of Social Work, where we teach practice skills and academic knowledge for entry-level professional practice, so either social work practice or different human services. Another pathway is, or this is a pathway, the Graduate Certificate of Human Services. It provides students with knowledge and skills to transition into a postgraduate degree in the human service profession. Let's say you've already graduated in a different discipline, for example, architecture or economics or something. So all you need is 4 units that you core units that are actually helping you or giving you knowledge and skills to transition into a postgraduate degree, being the Master of Social Work qualifying. So that would be the easiest or the fastest way to get to diploma. Because and then we have the Master of Social Work qualifying. It's currently community service and aligned health workers. I'll just explain for each course. So Bachelor of Social Work has 16 units of competency, and they are all compulsory units. Compulsory workshops, it means 1 year full-time or part-time equivalent, maximum 3 years. It's an entry-level qualification. It suits what's called school leavers or mature age students and career changers. It provides fundamental knowledge in social science, explores ongoing impact of gender, class, culture, etc., on the psychosocial and political, cultural, and economic relations. So it looks into the interpersonal relations. It makes a difference in the lives of individuals, families, and communities, because these are the 3 levels or 3 methodological approaches that we have in social work. So again, working with individuals, with groups, that might be families as well, and communities. That addresses the injustice and inequity. Bachelor of Social Work might be your pathway to a Medicare provider number. Field education placements are meaning unpaid work placements. 500 hours, there are 2 placements during the Bachelor of Social Work studies. So each 500 placement includes 12 hours of practice theory integration seminars. If you would like to study Bachelor of Social Work, it's usually 2 to 3 units per trimester full-time, or 1 to 2 units if you decide to study part-time. So it can be full-time or part-time. Some units are available online or by blended delivery. We also have a Bachelor of Social Work honours that are available for meritorious students in Year 4, even though that's been decided in Year 3 already. When it comes to course entry requirements, it means that you can either participate in a screening interview, typically being done online, and complete a senior secondary certificate of education or equivalent, or completion of a certificate 4 or above or equivalent, or be 21 years of age or above at the date of commencement, or admission to an undergraduate degree at an Australian university or equivalent. We also have postgraduate courses, And I've already mentioned the Graduate Certificate of Human Services, which is a pathway, basically comprises of 4 units to be completed over 1 or 2 trimesters, full-time, 2+ units per trimester, or part-time, 1 unit per trimester. So basically it means that in 6 months you can complete this course as a pathway to postgraduate studies. Full-time enrollment involves 36 hours of face-to-face workshops per unit because it's 12 weeks. Provides specific knowledge in sociology, social policy making, Indigenous issues, and professional communication. So these are the focuses. So if you've studied in a different scientific field and you want to transit towards social work, you need this knowledge from sociology, social policy, and professional communication, as well as issues concerning Indigenous people in Australia, and that will help you or be a good basis to continue study through studying Masters of Social Work, Masters Social Qualifying. So in this course, you can learn about contemporary Australian issues and how this relates to human service work, and a special qualification for students wanting to transition into the Masters, as I've already mentioned. Course entry requirements are a written statement outlining your interest in studying social work, which is usually 500 words, and a bachelor degree with at least 4 cognate units, so social science, psychology, community and welfare work, nursing, aligned health and counselling. So if you've completed one of those, you can just enter the Masters of Social Work, because you do have these cognate, at least 4 cognate units. If not, you can go through the Human Service Graduate Certificate in Human Service as your pathway to transition. Or a bachelor degree with evidence of at least 6 months of full-time study in social science or equivalent. And the Master of Social Work Qualifying is comprised of 12 units, including 2 field educations, 500 hours student placement for each, and 2 research units, being the research methods and the research project. It's same as in Bachelor of Social Work, 2 to 3 units per trimester full-time, or 1 to 2 units part-time. As I've already mentioned, the Australian Association of Social Work accredited qualification. It is an entry qualification into the social work profession and has been determined to meet all the Australian social work education and accreditation standards. The career advancement also can be a career change or professional identity, if that's what you want. It's also, Master of Social Work Qualifying is also a pathway to a Medicaid provider number. And we reached the point where you can ask questions. If you haven't already asked questions, use the chat function to ask a question, and it would be me or our course advisor that would answer your questions. So if you don't mind, I'll just stop sharing this presentation now. Thank you for attending this session today. I hope I did give you a framework to kind of think about and decide. And if you had any doubts, I hope that social work is closer to your heart now after this session. And I hope to see you all soon.